Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. Today is Thursday, June 27th, 2024. I am John Podhoretz, the editor of Commentary Magazine. With me, media commentary columnist Christine Rosen. Hi, Christine.
Hi, John.
And Washington commentary columnist Matthew Continetti. Hi, Matt.
Hi, John.
Abe Greenwald off today. Extraordinarily rare event. And so it's just the three of us. And of course, we are going to have to talk about the upcoming debate tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern. Our friend Chris Stirewalt produced a very useful little chart, your colleague at AEI, for the Dispatch, where he gives a history of first debate bounces, meaning the response after a debate to the person who clearly, of the public to the person who I guess then clearly wins the debate because their poll numbers go up. So if we go back to 2008, the largest of the bounces in contemporary times, Obama on September 26th at Ole Miss debated John McCain. Polling day of debate, Obama +3. Polling 10 days after the election, after the debate, Obama +9. So Obama gained 6 points in that debate, which I don't remember McCain being particularly bad in the debate. I think it was just that the issue set that McCain was facing, which wasn't only Iraq, but was also the financial meltdown or the turmoil in the markets, just set Obama up extraordinarily well. 2012, Obama +4 on October 3rd in Denver, and polling 10 days after the debate had a tie, meaning Mitt Romney gained 4 points in what I think we can all agree was the most commanding debate performance of the 21st century, the one in which it was sort of indisputably the case that Romney had basically wiped the floor with Obama. 2016, September 26th in New York, Clinton 1.4 polling average on the day of the debate. 10 days after the debate, Clinton 4.6 up. That was against Trump. Obviously, Clinton gains 2 percentage points. I think everybody recognizes that Trump was horrible in that debate. And then the second debate happened where he had all of the Clinton women on stage. And I think this was the "you're the puppet, you're not the puppet, you're the puppet" debate. Not good for Trump. And then, of course, we have another not good for Trump, 2020, September 29th in Cleveland. Polling average day of the debate, Biden's +7. Polling average 10 days after the debate, Biden +10. Biden up 3. And that was, of course, the "will you shut up, man" debate for Biden.
This is all interesting, but I mean, my takeaway is that the debates don't matter because, sure, 2008, Obama's +9, 10 days after the debate, but the actual election day result is Obama +5. 2012, that's a tie, 10 days after the debate. The actual election result is Obama +4.
4, yeah.
2016, Clinton 4.6 after the debate. The election, the actual popular vote result was Clinton +2. In 2020, Biden +10, 10 days after the debate. And then the actual result was Biden +4. So we can see a bounce clearly in the Gallup tracking that Chris points out in his newsletter, but it doesn't seem to me to determine the actual election result.
Well, of course, then we need to talk about what went on after these debates. First of all,
right.
Some of these cases there were other debates, and Obama theoretically won the second debate. So maybe the closer you get to the election, the more important it is to win the debate. In 1980, Carter and Reagan debated only once in 10 days before the election, and that week or following that debate was when Reagan solidify what would be a historic landslide against the sitting incumbent, winning by 10 and winning 40 states after Jimmy Carter, among other things, said that, he had talked to his daughter Amy about nuclear weapons. That, I think, was a pretty decisive moment in American political history. Most debates are not, but that was one debate right before the election, right? 2016, Clinton gains and everything like that. But the signature event of that election was James Comey reopening the investigation into her emails on October 28th. So the debates didn't matter because there was a gigantic news development right in the middle of, toward the end, sort of like the debate in 1980. And then in 2020, Trump gets COVID in October. And I think probably never really.
But Biden was leading ahead of the debate.
Right. Well, of course,
and he was leading after the debate.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
We also we're waiting for the Supreme Court's decision on Trump's immunity claim too this week. We could have if that drops before the debate tonight, that could maybe scramble things a little bit.
Okay. Seriously, are they going to do that?
I don't know. I would if I were Justice. Just let's mix it up a bit.
They can't even post the publication of the Idaho lawsuit. They leaked that by accident. There's something going on with the tech team at the Supreme Court. We still haven't identified the leaker of the Dobbs decision 2 years ago. The Supreme Court needs to get its act together. I'm not talking about the justices. I'm not talking about flags. I'm talking about the support staff. Something is going on there. Clean house, Chief Justice. That's what I'm saying. Start anew, because you got to get it under control.
For all we know, they did clean house. I still don't understand what the idea that they could not identify that leaker. I am deeply suspicious that
someone
could not identify
someone
the leaker.
in power knows who that leaker is.
Yeah, you know why? Because it was on the direction of one of the Supreme Court justices. That's what I think, and that therefore they could not say that it was Sotomayor, and therefore they couldn't blame a clerk who was fulfilling the wishes of the clerk's boss. That's my conspiracy theory here. Along with Epstein being killed. By the way, just to come out of nowhere,
we're going full bore conspiracy. I love it.
Epstein was killed, right? Can we just agree on Epstein being killed at this late date? I know Bill Barr said he wasn't killed. There's no way he wasn't killed. There's all kinds of stuff about Epstein that we're not finding out about. Everybody involved with Epstein, from Trump to Clinton to these Wall Street types. So some conspiracy, and it's not even a conspiracy. Like he was in his jail cell. He ends up hanged. Somehow his co-cellmate was moved. Somehow the cameras weren't on, and somehow the guards were sleeping. So
all very mysterious.
Not a conspiracy theory to think that Epstein was killed, but clearly, I think it's perfectly fair to speculate that a very closed universe of people had access to that Dobbs decision.
Well, you got to throw in the Assange release this week is another good conspiracy theory, because they wiped all the DNC email records, right? That was part of the deal. I'm sorry, I just want to throw fuel on your fire.
Is that right?
That's what I read.
Oh, what with the claw?
Have you done your research, John? Yeah, you've got to do your research.
That's a great out, Christine. Yeah, that's what I read.
Yeah, well, could somebody did somebody take the server out and smash it with a hammer? I mean, I need more proof. I need more on this. Okay. Boy, okay, we're a little punchy this morning, and obviously, like we've been talking about this debate for months. We've been talking about Biden and Trump now for a year and a half. And one thing that happened yesterday was this razor thin race that has been a razor thin race for 18 months on the eve of the debate is no longer quite so razor thin, in the sense that we have multiple polls that now have Trump up outside the margin of error. I mean, very slightly outside the margin of error, like half a point outside the margin of error. But that means he's up. Like that's, and all of these four different forecasts, I believe, that is Nate Silver's Silver Bulletin, his new a private company using the algorithm system that he developed at 538. 538, the New York Times and the Washington Post, and then some other private thing. Only 538 has Biden with a 51% chance of winning against Trump's 49. Silver has Trump at 65%. The Washington Post has Trump at 53%. And somebody else, Decision Desk HQ, has Trump at 58%. So as the debate comes, and as the story of the last couple of weeks supposedly was that Biden had, that the conviction had solidified Democratic support behind Biden, and if that were true, there's just enough data this week to suggest that whatever progress Biden was making either stalled or is reversed a little bit, and that Trump is favored to win by a very small amount. And just because you're favored to win doesn't mean you win, right? Hillary was favored to win and didn't win. Hillary was favored to win by a gigantic margin and didn't win. But that's where we are, right?
Well, my big takeaway from Nate Silver's model that he debuted and that showed Trump leading was twofold. One was that Nate Silver said, look, the race isn't a toss-up. This is Trump's ahead. Trump's winning the race. I thought that was interesting. And the second thing was just a kind of a throwaway sentence in his piece. Silver wrote that this is the first race since 2004 where the Republican candidate has had a consistent polling lead. That just kind of was a smack in the face for me, because of course that 20 years coincides with my time in Washington. So, I show up and Republicans don't have a lead in the polls for
I knew it was you.
I knew it was you all along.
If I needed any more evidence,
the Continental effect.
My arrival doomed the GOP. But in any case, so that was pretty incredible. And it's true. And this is the thing about these most recent polls, whether it's the New York Times Siena poll that came out yesterday, the head-to-head general election number, 48 Trump, 44 Biden. The Quinnipiac poll that came out yesterday, head-to-head 49 Trump, 45 Biden. The Washington Post released a series of swing state polls yesterday. It had Trump winning 5 out of the 7 swing states. The Sun Belt swing states plus Michigan, that's enough for Trump to win the election. Now, all of this data reinforces what has been true now for months, which is that Trump has a slight, in some cases, very slight lead nationally, but a much more significant lead in the battleground states. Nothing has changed. And that's why I guess I'm just skeptical that what happens tonight at this debate will change things as well.
Although the AP claims that 6 in 10 Americans are going to watch this debate, so which I of course I have no way of judging whether that's more or less than usual. And we've talked a bit about how Trump could easily win this if he would stay disciplined, stay on message, talk about the economy and inflation, talk about the border. You know what else is happening today in Texas? The funeral for a 12-year-old girl who was raped and beaten by people who came across the border illegally. That's happening today. Trump just needs to stay on message and tell the American people, this guy's policies have led higher prices for you, the death of innocent American children because he cannot control the border, and just list all of the things, chaos around the globe. I think we all probably agree that there's a 50-50 chance Trump has that kind of discipline and he won't let Biden get under his skin. But the stakes here really are much higher for Biden, I would think. He has to not only, we always joked before the State of the Union, he just has to not collapse, but he's actually got to have some sort of message. He has been bouncing around on his messaging with Trump. He's going to be a dictator. Oh, he's, all of his policies are worse than mine. But in fact, what they've seemed to have settled on is he's a narcissist. Like he's only in this for himself. Well, yeah, everybody already knows that. What about your policies? And I'm not sure he's going to be able to give a disciplined response to Trump attacking him on these actually substantive things that Americans are worried about.
Here's what I'm looking for in the debate. And here's what I think debates do when they do them. which is overall command. So let's say we have no idea which of the two of them can display command, or if either of them can display command. So if command is off the table, basically all Obama had to do in that first debate was show that he wasn't just the guy on the stage in Denver, in the stadium with the Roman pillars, saying we are saying we will the ocean, we're going to make the ocean levels go down because we are such magic powers. He had to show that he was a fluent, and he'd done a lot of debates with Hillary, but the bar was incredibly low. Just show command, and you can be the next president. So either of them shows command, it will be an enormous moment, even though they're both presidents, right? So they should both be able to summon that, but that's obviously a weakness that one of them has cognitively and the other has emotionally. That's a sort of general overall impression, but of course debates are moments, right? That's all anybody ever remembers of debates are moments. Rick Perry going up on the third cabinet department that he wished to get rid of, Obama saying the 20th century, by the way, and now in reverse, right? Saying to Romney, the 20th century called and wants its foreign policy back. And then, of course, Obama was, historically, horribly, disastrously wrong about that. And Romney was right, but still a pretty significant blow. And I think 2016 and 2020 had various moments, Trump stalking, walking around behind Hillary on the stage and that kind of thing, but not an overall sense like, well, it's like one of those intelligence square debates. It's like, I was really unsure where I stood on immigration, but the conversation was so enlightening that at the end, I think on balance, I think Trump has the better of the immigration argument here, right? That's not the way this works. According to what I read, by the way, Christine, so the largest debate audience ever was, in fact, the Trump-Biden debate, the Will You Shut Up Man, which had 80 million viewers. But in a country of 330 million people, I think 60 million people watched the Reagan-Carter debate, and that was in a country that was 250 million in size. So the question will be, how much of the country watches this? And there are apparently little bits of evidence to suggest that despite all of the lack of enthusiasm talk, that we are going to have a historically high turnout in the election. I can't cite you what pieces of information people are using to say, oh boy. But you do say both parties are now very expert at figuring out how to turn out people.
Yeah, and the Democrats are about to unleash another huge ad blitz, right after the debate. I do want to just say again, for the record, no matter how well or badly Biden does, it should not take the leader of this country a week to prepare for a televised debate. That is the part that is still really bugging me. And I don't know how many Americans have tuned into that fact. He has been AWOL, completely AWOL. The only presence of Joe Biden in the last week, a week where we've seen Jews attacked. We've seen all kinds of, international crises develop. He has had a social media account tweeted. He's had some staffer sending out stuff on social media. That's unacceptable. That's just unacceptable. So I hope, there's no way, I think, for Trump to bring that up in any sort of coherent fashion in tonight's debate. But I hope the American people, while watching this debate tonight, understand that however well Biden does, it took him more than a week to prepare for this.
I've been enjoying Biden's absence from the national stage.
Right. It is sort of a blessing.
Like a vacation for me. Don't have to worry about him walking to the helicopter. Don't have to wonder what he's saying when he kind of descends into garble at public events. No strange stories or lies.
You saw the Trump ad on social media that he posted yesterday of him walking up the steps to Air Force One side by side with Biden walking and tripping multiple times. Yeah.
The thing you mentioned, Christine, about the new ad blitz that the Democrats are preparing, that is just shoveling more fuel onto the fire. The Biden's team has spent tens of millions of dollars on television ads in swing states. Again, with no real effect, it seems, on the race. And for them to just spend more money. Plus, by the way, they have less cash on hand than Trump after the huge influx of fundraising that Trump received after his conviction earlier in the spring. I don't know what could happen that would really change the dynamic of the race out of this debate. I will guarantee you one thing. If Biden goes through all 90 minutes without completely dissolving into a puddle of goo, the mainstream media will pronounce him the winner.
Right.
And say, all of that talk about Biden not being up to the job has been completely exaggerated. And I'll also have a corollary, which is that the mainstream media will not like Trump's performance. He's going to do something or say something will make the punditocracy conclude, that Trump, he's just not really presidential.
Well,
material.
And that's why, though, the risk for the Biden campaign, one of the things they're doing with their ad buy is a full-page USA Today ad, and this is what it says. The choice, a convicted criminal who's looking out for himself or a president who's fighting for you. Joe Biden doesn't look like he could fight off a cold at this point. I don't know how they think that message of him as a fighter is a good one. It simply isn't. Like, call him
for the record, you have a cold.
I have worse than a cold. Yes, I have a terrible cold. Yeah, here I am.
Here you are. I think that's a beautiful thing. But it is important to note that the contrast. So you're saying the contrast is bad, but this, we're told now, is what the brainchild of the Biden brain trust is this message, which is Trump is out for himself. Okay.
That's what I said.
Really?
I'm like, we knew
I'm interested in this because they're like, well, I guess saying he's a convicted felon isn't working. I mean, maybe if Judge Merchan says you're going to prison before the Republican convention, that will have some effect or impact or something, but that's not working. This has so it's Trump is selfish. Again, do they know? I mean, they have a lot of money. They're doing a lot of focus groups. Maybe people go, yeah, Trump is selfish. He really is out for himself. I don't like that about him. Yeah, people don't like Trump. It's really important to note that people don't like Trump. In a conventional race in which you had a conventional candidate against Trump, it kind of in the way that Biden was a relatively conventional candidate against Trump in 2020, Trump would not win in November. They don't like him, but they don't like Biden, and Biden's negatives are now higher than Trump's negatives. And generally speaking, under those circumstances, you need to do something about your negatives. And they are more focused on trying to figure out how to make this election about Trump. And the last 4 years have been actually far too inadvertently consequential for them to succeed at this, because we have the pullout of Afghanistan, we have Ukraine, we have inflation, we have the infrastructure bill, we have the Recovery Act, we have the CHIPS Act, we have the immigration crisis, we have Israel, Gaza, we have protests for 9 months on the streets of America and on college campuses. This has been an unstable period in American life, and what Biden needs to run a classic reelection campaign would be to say, I did okay, right? Like, don't change horses in midstream. It's like, no, under conventional circumstances, we would be jumping off this horse onto the other horse. The weird problem is the other horse is a pretty lousy horse also. We rejected him 4 years ago, and now this is our only other option.
Right. Though one of the oddities of having a two incumbent election is that people can compare the Trump record versus the Biden record. And when voters do that, they tell pollsters they preferred the Trump record. In particular, they preferred the Trump economy, where incomes were growing, especially for low-income people, and we also had price stability, right? So that is Biden's real obstacle, it seems to me. And the debates are his only opportunities to force people to think of it not as a choice between two records, but as a choice between two men. And if Trump is the Trump of the first debate in 2020, the interruptions, the yelling, the snide remarks, the back and forth, then you could see a situation where Biden might gain a little ground. But all the evidence that seems to me suggests that this race has not changed. Nothing seems to change the race. The conviction didn't change the race. If the conviction didn't change the race, will the debate change it? It's hard for me to see.
And we have within the next, I think it is 3 weeks, Trump needs to pick a vice president. That'll dominate the news cycle.
We have the sentencing.
Sentencing
happens
July 11th.
Right. Then the convention.
Convention July 15th.
Then the Democratic convention, and then potentially a second debate. Yeah, September. We'll see if that happens depending on tonight. But
what else do we have? We have continued confusion about what American policy is toward Israel, Gaza, and Hezbollah, which does not demonstrate command, does not mean I got a firm hand on the tiller, because nobody in this country from us, I read 5,000 words a day on what's going on between Israel, Gaza, Hamas, and Lebanon and Hezbollah. Nobody knows what American policy is right now. There was an amazing bit of story yesterday, or an analysis yesterday, that said the reason that Bibi Netanyahu went public, and this was not a piece like planted by Bibi, but when Biden said, I want to withhold the 2,000-pound bunker buster, 2,000-pound bombs from Israel, his staff interpreted that to mean that he wanted them to go over what was being shipped to Israel with a fine-tooth comb. Now, maybe so in the end, it was the case that the Biden administration was slow walking and withholding or delaying weapon shipments, or the blocking up or gumming up the pipeline. And the argument that was being made was that Biden indicated that he wanted them to do this, though he didn't, apparently. So that's like the opposite of steadiness. That's the opposite of he's really got an interesting handle on how to handle this very complicated situation. And that is not going anywhere, because not only hasn't the Rafah part of this war ended, which I think it will to a successful conclusion for Israel, but the war's only half fought. And he's going to do whatever he can. He doesn't want there to be a shooting war in Lebanon in November. Well, once again, if you really don't want that, do what you can to let Israel win by September. But he's not going to do that either. And that's the main world planet news on the planet. And then we're going to have news in the United States.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, it's not just Hamas and Hezbollah. There's Iran. And then there's this report that I came across in my reading yesterday, that saying that North Korea may send soldiers to fight in Ukraine. And that is very disturbing. And it's another sign of this emerging axis of autocrats. It's just another sign of the globalization of this conflict, right? That if all of these forces are working together. So, Biden's going into this debate trying to portray or remind Americans of Trump as the chaos candidate, as the man who it goes from issue to issue, who speaks in the patter of an insult comic, who is always getting into controversies, can't prevent himself from fighting. But that argument has had less purchase, it seems to me, since October 7th in particular, but even earlier, really since the summer of 2021 with the border, with Afghanistan, then going into Ukraine, the rise in prices, the kind of politicization of our energy policy, whether it's the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, whether it's this pause on LNG permitting for export facilities that Biden did earlier this year. All of this actually makes Biden more a symbol of chaos for a lot of Americans. Plus the fact that he's often incomprehensible or out to lunch in his age. So it seems to me that those two things kind of cancel each other out, leaving Americans with kind of a frustrated choice where many voters say, well, at least we had a better economy and a more stable world under Trump during the first 3 years of his presidency.
Two details out of the New York Times Siena poll. One, and this just bounces everywhere, and of course it is a subset of the electorate. So the problem with polling is that if you're talking about 120 people in a poll or something like that, using that to extrapolate to the rest of the country is very hard, and the margin of error on numbers like that are very big. But this poll has independent voters, or let's call them non-aligned voters or something like that, up with Trump up by 10. That number has been bouncing around, right? So it has largely been in Trump's camp, but a couple of points, then some are 16 points. This is 10 points. That speaks to this point that you just made. The second thing is that Trump has completely consolidated the Republican vote. This idea that there were 20% of Republicans who were not going to vote for Trump under any circumstances because they were still voting for Nikki Haley 2 months after Nikki Haley dropped out of the race, and that Trump was only getting 80% in the Colorado primary or some other of these primaries. If this poll is correct, Trump has 92% of the Republicans or something like that in his pocket, and it is Biden who is having trouble consolidating the Democratic vote, which is to say the Democratic vote is going to vote for Trump, or is not going to vote, or is going to vote for RFK, who I think is probably a declining asset at this point. It's that they don't want him, and they're not telling pollsters that they're going to vote for him. And so Trump has a very solid foundation, and Biden has a weaker foundation. And one of the issues there is that means Trump doesn't have to shore up his foundation, and Biden has to spend time and money and energy convincing the people who should not need to be convinced that he deserves a second term.
Well, and the irony being, Joe Biden has been in public life longer than I have been alive. 1972 was when he became a senator. I was born in 1973. And the idea that someone with, he actually can't even invoke his experience anymore. That's how I think, and that's actually where I think the age issue is really harming him, because he's not able to competently draw on, well, I've done this, I've done that, either because he can't recall it himself or because it's something that voters would actually see as a net negative now, given how their pessimism about how our system works.
I'll tell you who will be watching tonight. Former President Jimmy Carter, still hanging on, still there.
Oh boy.
Approaching his 100th birthday, his centennial. But as I've always said, I think he's sticking around to watch Biden lose. I'm pretty sure
it's keeping him going.
He's keeping him going, and he'll be tuning in. And of course, he's also in Georgia, where the debate is taking place.
Okay, I want to go dark on the Jimmy Carter analogy for a minute and cite one of your favorite writers, Stephen King.
Yes.
In this respect, which is that
it's gonna be a Pet Sematary reference of some sort. I hope
no,
not. That was chilling book.
Jimmy Carter. I am not going to participate in the sentimentality about Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was a terrible president, and he's a terrible person and an anti-Semite, and I'm not going to let that drop. He is one of the people who said that Israel is an apartheid state, and I do not respect him. I do not like him. His longevity is a miraculous fact, and I'm going to attribute it to God is making him live through this election so that he, like in the Green Mile, if you remember in the Green Mile, movie better known than the story, Tom Hanks is the prison official who knows that he's got this creature of God who is a prisoner under his charge, who is not guilty of the crime that he is charged with, and nonetheless sees no way but to put him to death, and lives and is cursed to live forever with the knowledge that he had an angel of God in his charge, and even though he was a decent man, let him die. And so, though I don't think Carter is a particularly decent man, yes, I said it because anti-Semites are not decent people, I do think that it would be an interesting punishment for him to see now, unless you think this is great because it'll be like, well, now somebody else lost.
No, well, that's what I know. That's where I am.
Okay,
yes, because Biden was the first sitting senator to endorse Carter in '76. That's to Christine's observation about how long Biden has been in politics. He was already in the Senate, and he was the first young guy. Oh, this guy Jimmy Carter. And of course, Biden too. You know, his career is so odd, and he lies. You know, Biden was an ally of a lot of those Southern Democrats. You know, and the way he talks about Delaware, kind of. So I think it's Jimmy is trying to figure out. Okay, is the young buck who endorsed me 50 years ago, is he going to succeed where I failed in getting a second term? And I think he kind of suspects Biden will not succeed. And I think he wants to see that. It's pretty amazing to me. I had this thought while teaching a class here at AI yesterday. There are two Democrats who have served 2 full terms in office since FDR was president. Only 2. And they're Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. And the funny thing about the contemporary left is that it hates both of them. It thinks Clinton was essentially a conservative in the views of the left, and even Obama was beholden into the so-called neoliberal project, right? And that's why he didn't really take over civil society and the free economy when he was president. And yet, and I think that criticism of Clinton and Obama has informed Biden's presidency. It's pushed him to the left throughout this year. And yet they're the only 2. And Biden has consciously rejected that legacy and I think been much more solicitous of the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren project. And it's not doing him much good, is it?
Right. Well, to John's earlier point about him having to spend time and energy maintaining his base, something Trump really doesn't have to do right now. That is part of the reason why I think a lot of old school liberal Democrats look at what the Democratic Party has become right now. Particularly, look, we had another thing come out, a news report, and I don't know if Trump will bring this up, but one of the trans women appointed by the Biden administration turns out to have been trying to get rid of age limits for some of this extremely harmful, permanently sterilizing gender surgery and gender treatment for trans kids. I mean, this is something that drives the average American and even the average liberal Democrat a little nuts. This kind of excess and however many facelifts Joe Biden has gotten since 1972, he is still kind of a old school poll. The New York Times did a whole. By the way, we should. I don't know. This just slightly obsesses me, but shouldn't there be some sort of disclosure, like a kind of truth in advertising? Like he's 81, but he's supposed to look like 65 because of the cosmetic work. Nobody wants to talk about that he's had done. But it is very interesting to me that the New York Times, Peter Baker did a big piece about how Biden, the old school poll, clashing with the way politics is done now. I don't think that's it at all. I think he is actually ceded, as you say, Matt, to his more left-wing flank, because that's where I don't know whether it's his staff or the people around him who see that as where the energy of the party is. But those old school liberal Democrats are the ones who got Clinton and Obama elected. So he needs them, and they are concerned about the direction the party has taken.
Well, the Clinton analogy is very useful here because in some ways the Biden campaign in 2019 and 2020 followed aspects of the Clinton campaign in 91 and 92, which of course started much later. Clinton ran as the Democratic candidate who could be of the most appeal in the changed America that Ronald Reagan had brought to the political world, right? So he did the Sister Soldier speech about the evils of Black racism or rap racism or whatever you want to call it. He notoriously went back to Arkansas to sign and to ensure the death of Ricky Ray Rector, a convicted murderer who was so mentally handicapped that at his last meal, he said he wanted to save his dessert for later. He did these things in order to make himself of the most possible appeal to Americans who thought that the Democratic Party was too far left. And then he got elected. And then in his first year and a half, he did what Biden did. He hewed, having been, he made a weird decision to echo his governorship because he had become governor of Arkansas in 1978, governed from the left and lost. It's a 2-year governorship. Is it still? It was then. I don't know if it's still a 2-year governorship in Arkansas. Lost in 1980, came back in 1982, having reformed himself as a moderate, right? Became head of the DLC, which was the sort of an effort to be a sort of a moderate wing of the Democratic Party, and gradually got himself into position to win in 92. But when he came into office in 1993, he governed as a generic 1993 conventional left liberal, and 1994 rolled around and the Democratic Party was slaughtered, and he went and then shifted hard to the center, like instantly read the room. Right now, Biden didn't have the result in 2022 that Clinton had in 1994, obviously, right? He was saved from electoral consequence. Everybody thought there was going to be a red wave, and largely because of Trump's intercessions that saved the Democratic Party from this reckoning. But a better politician than Biden would have looked at the first polling between him and Trump and said, I'm underwater on all these issues, on inflation, on the economy, on immigration, on public order, and all of that. And that dates back. That dates back to the last year. I better move to the center. I did that as a candidate for president in 2019. I don't know why I can't do that now. And maybe that was what he thought he was doing by being so affirmative about the Israeli efforts against Hamas at the beginning. I don't know. But he has read this wrong,
right?
Because he can only win, weirdly enough, on personality. Because if you look at the issue sets, go down the list on the issue sets, Trump is up in 16 out of 18, and in at least one, his biggest issue, or one of the big issues he wants to run, which is the threat to democracy. In the Washington Post poll that came out yesterday, Trump beats Biden on who's going to protect democracy better.
That is a huge face slap to the Democratic Party messaging on post January 6th, isn't it?
Didn't the NBC poll find the same thing recently? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just one poll.
So it's ambiguous. In other words, like even there, the only thing he has is abortion. He's got abortion by 10 or something like that. And, I guess climate change, although climate change, it's astounding how few Americans care about climate change after 40 years of being hit over the head with a hammer about climate change. Fewer than 1% of Americans say that climate change is the top issue for them. I mean, it's actually kind of,
I don't know. Every
amazing.
Time I think of climate change now, I think of little brats throwing paint on wonderful works of art, or blocking the freeways and preventing average Americans from getting to their jobs. That's what I think.
Well, there you go. So so that's pretty amazing. Also amazing, of course, is our friend David Bahnsen's book, Full-Time Work and the Meaning of Life. Why is David's book so original? It's original because it's not your classic economist case about how productivity is so essential to the economy, and how everyone freedom means that you can do your best and help your family and all of that. This is a book about the value of work to the human soul, and locates the importance of work and the centrality of work in the rights and the capacities and the abilities that God gave each and every one of us. He harnesses theological, ontological, economic, political science arguments, but in the end, this is the core of the book, that to fulfill God's mission on earth, we need to dedicate ourselves to the work that we do. And that is why it is such an original book, why you should go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever, buy it. Or if you want to learn more about Full-Time Work and the Meaning of Life by David Bahnsen, you can just go to fulltimebook.com. Okay, so we are going to do a podcast. We are going to convene directly after the debate is over tonight. Usually we tape these relatively early in the morning on the day that we release the podcast, but we're going to do it tonight. We're going to try to avoid post-debate commentary and provide our own relatively fresh perspective. Some of that might require us to stay off Twitter, so we're not flooded with the instant messaging that the partisans are going to be throwing. But Matt, in the end, you are not looking. So I think here's what I'm going to handicap us.
Okay.
Handicap
us,
and that means Matt, Christine, and the absent Seth and Abe.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say, "Whoa, that was wow," then we'll know that the debate was consequential, because you're coming at this with the debates don't matter thing.
Yes, the weary cynicism of
so
inside the Beltway.
What can I say? I could say that, but still not think it matters. I could say,
okay. Well, I will ask
totally
you. I'm ask you that very question. Okay. Christine, more substantive than the rest of us in some ways. Christine, I think, is going to be looking for policy outrages that come out of the mouth of the candidates that, as she would say, really annoy her, really tick her off, or really get to her. And so we're going to get substance.
I'm going to take a disco nap this afternoon, so I'm fresh and ready at whatever we record, like 11 p.m.
Okay.
Be ready.
Okay. Abe is going to be judging the Catskills performances of the two. Which one has the best line? Is Trump funny? Is Biden lame? Which one deserves to get the hook? Which one should have eggs thrown at them? Do the outrages that Trump might visit upon Biden and the American people that will stimulate outraged commentary from the liberal commentariat, will those in fact score and land with the American people as a kind of anti-PC comedians routines sometimes will? That's where I'm going with Abe. Seth, what do you guys think? Seth, I think, also will go with substance, because you Christine, you and Seth are very serious people, and I'm
not sure
I'm too old, right? Yeah. And I'm just going to be looking for the one line that characterizes the debate, because in the end it always comes down to one line,
right?
Or one thing.
Point.
Yeah,
right.
The gaffe or the zing.
or not, right? There is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, which is a sad. So that's the Ford moment between Ford and Carter, and it was a particularly sad moment because what Ford was trying to say is that the Soviet Union doesn't have the ability to quench the ideas and feelings and emotions of the free peoples behind the Iron Curtain who have been imprisoned by the Russians. But he said there is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, and therefore looked like he was, clueless and stupid. Amy Carter's nuclear weapons. George H.W. Bush looking at his watch. Do we have any others? You're likable enough. That helped revive, right? But that helped revive Hillary.
I want to disclose that my debates don't matter.
Yes.
Thesis applies to the general election. Right. I do think debates can matter in a primary election.
Right.
But this is a general election, and the candidates are who they are. They have not debated. Neither of them have debated since their last meeting 4 years ago. Right. One is 81, soon to be 82. The other 78 years old. They're fixed in their personalities, and no matter all of these rules, I expect a mess.
I'm so excited. I'm sorry. I've been saying this from the minute that they announced this debate. I'm so excited because I can't take it. We need more. We need new material. I can't take it. It's like America and these candidates are locked in no exit.
It's a purgatorial position.
No exit.
Yes.
We are not allowed out of the room. Hell is other people. In this case, hell is these two guys running for president against each other. Let us hope that at least we take a step up from hell into purgatory, only to be cast back down into hell if Matt's right and the debates don't matter. Okay, Christine, I believe you're up today with Commentary Recommends.
Yes, I have one that I think is thematically linked to what we've been discussing today and what we'll all be watching tonight on the debates. And that's that, it's a book by a historian named Frank Dikötter, and it came out in 2019. It's called How to Be a Dictator, The Cult of Personality in the 20th Century. And the reason I want to recommend this is that, we always hear the left in particular loves to talk about Trump being a dictator. He's a fascist. He's this, that, or the other. And we ourselves have discussed cults of personality in politics, their dangers, et cetera, et cetera. What this does is actually give us historical grounding in what that really looks like. When you have a genuine cult of personality, when you have a genuine dictator in charge of people. So what he does is he gives these wonderful biographical vignettes and discussions of some of the major baddies of the 20th century. You've got Mussolini, Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Kim Il-sung, Baby Doc Duvalier, Ceausescu. He just goes through so if you've never read full biographies of any of these guys, this gives you the portraits and biographical material really well done. But he just talks about how this happens, how people come under the influence and sway of dictators. It's just really well done, because one of the things he points out that I think is useful for today is how dictators in the 20th century actually liked to have the illusion of popular support. They liked to be able to say, look, the people adore me. And then, of course, use repressive measures to insist the people perform their adoration. So there are these wild stories of how when Mao died, the Chinese people could sort of weep on cue because they'd been so trained and lived in such fear of and under such repression that they knew what they were supposed to do. And yet he cites this fact that, in small rural districts in China, all the liquor sold out within moments of news reaching them that this guy had died. So the way the human behavior can be shaped en masse in societies where dictators control not just the military, but the means of cultural production, right? Newspapers, cultural arts, and the culture. And so I would encourage anyone who's hyperventilating about Trump as a dictator, who might sort of need some reminders of historically what this has looked like, and how it ended for many of these individuals. I recommend Frank Dikotter's How to Be a Dictator, Cult of Personality.
How do you spell Dikotter?
So his name is spelled Diko with an umlaut. Teter. So I'm probably mispronouncing it. He's a historian and teaches at the University of Hong Kong, I believe. But it's really well written too. He's just a wonderful writer, and it's not super long. But yeah, Dikotter, yeah, Dikotter.
Okay, great recommendation. Well, as I said, we will be back. We will actually be releasing the podcast probably very late tonight, into maybe a little after midnight, which is way earlier than we would ordinarily, since we ordinarily
the post-debate podcast. You mean
post-debate podcast, and that will be our last. Well, I'll say tomorrow. Also, it'll be our last live podcast or live to tape podcast for a couple of weeks, as we are taking a break, and we're going to have a whole series of podcasts about our favorite poems, our favorite memoirs, our favorite biographies, and some other very interesting stuff. So until tonight, for Matt and Christine, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the candle burning.